Alright, 13. It's a plastic nut, so you got to be real gentle with it. Okay, once the nut is loose, just pull the choke assembly out. There's that. And then to release the throttle, just pull the cable and get it out of the little bail there. And then that just pulls out. And there's the carburetors. Alright, now I'm going to remove the front bolt for the foot peg. And this is the mount for the frame cradle. And that's why we're taking this out. So there's a bunch of stuff to take loose over here. Okay. We take this off. This is the thing you're supposed to pull out and clean the screen. They say you should do it at every service, but that's ridiculous. If you pull it out once, you'll see there's never anything in it unless your motor blows up. So, alright, that's loose. And then I have to pull the clutch cable loose, which in order to do that, you literally pull it loose. And that's out of the way. Alright, and then there's a little plastic deal here that holds some stuff. Now we've got the starter. The starter's connected back to the battery. I'm going to pull these bolts out, and then the starter itself will come loose. So 2 bolts hold the starter. Alright, got those 2 bolts out. Now we're going to take a 10mm wrench and take the cable off the starter. Alright, now with the cable off and those bolts out, the starter just pulls out. There's an O-ring there, so sometimes it's a little recalcitrant to come out. That's all there is to removing the starter. Now we're going to take the shock adjuster out of the way. There's only 1 bolt holding it. 2 cables that we have to take loose because we're leaving them connected to the motor. One of them's the alternator connector, and just pull that apart. That's the one with the yellow wires. And the other one is this green wire. It's this motorcycle looking connector, and that's going to be for the ignition pickup. Okay. Alright, this is the ground cable. I'm going to take the ground cable loose. Alright, so now we're going to pull the starter cable back out of the way and then feed the alternator and the pickup cables back this way. Alright, and then this cable harness is for the oil and the neutral, and it's the shock. So now the motor is pretty much free, except for the bolts holding it in. But there's some other things that we have to do before we pull the motor out. Okay, forgot one thing here, the tack cable. So we've got to pull this little rubber boot up, push it out of the way, and then get in here with a pair of pliers, because this is a knurled nut, and just give it a couple of turns with the pliers, and then we can just undo it with the fingers. And once that guy's loose, tack cable just pulls out. Now we're going to take the valve cover off. It's a 10mm, and it's kind of like adjusting the valves. Just pop all these screws loose. Alright, so the bolts are out, and now we've got to wrestle the valve cover off. Alright, this is the bolt that you remove to put the crank stop bolt in. And we take this bolt all the way out because it's just a cover bolt. Okay, and then we put the crank stop bolt in, but we're not going to put it all the way in. We're just going to get it started. Lost the washer. Got to make sure the washer's back on there when we put the cover bolt back in. Just want to get this bolt in until it bottoms, and then we're going to back it off a little because the crank is not in the right position yet. So when this bolt stops there, back it off about a turn. Okay, I'm going to leave that wrench there. All right, now we're going to take one spark plug out so that we can turn the motor over to get it in the right position. Okay, so to get these lined up, the cams have these marks on them, and we want the marks to be in line with the cover. All right, and now we can turn this bolt, and when we get the crank in just the right position, the bolt goes in, and then we can snug it up, and now the crank is locked. So now we can work on the stuff behind this cover. Okay. Right, so we need to take the shift lever off. I'm going to mark where the line goes. Hopefully I'll be able to get that on right without having to ride it and readjust it. And you just loosen this bolt up, and you do have to remove it all the way because there's a relief in the shaft that the bolt goes through. So the bolt has to be removed before the lever will come out. Okay, next thing we're going to do is loosen all these screws up and pop the cover off. All these screws loose, you move the clutch lever and the cover will just come off. Now you want to take care with the gasket. Doesn't matter whether it stays with the cover or the motor. We have to take this nut off and get this pulley off in order to split the cases. So in order to get the pulley off, we have to drop the cam chain down. So the first thing that we want to do is take this nut off, then we can go ahead and take the clutch off and take the countershaft sprocket loose. So with it in gear, the crank is locked. Okay, so with a 30mm socket and a cheater bar, we'll loosen this nut up. Alright, and now we can take it off. Now we're going to remove the clutch, which is simply a matter of cracking these bolts loose and then removing them. Alright, with the bolts loose, you can see that the springs have their tension released, and we can just remove all 6 of these guys, and then the clutch pack will come out, leaving the basket. So we'll get these out. And then pull the entire basket out. The clutch pack, not the basket. Okay. So this is a set of friction plates and pressure plates. That's what the clutch pack is. I want it to stay together, so I'm going to put it in a bag. Alright, now we got to get this nut loose, but just like the countershaft sprocket, it's a tab washer, so we're going to knock the tab back. Alright, this is a 1 1/16 socket. It's the same as 27mm, which fits this nut. Now the thing is, in order to remove this, you can see that the basket will just spin. This is the input to the transmission, so you have no way to hold this. So you've got to figure out a way to hold this so that you can get this nut loose. I've got this clutch tool, which is a very fancy vice grip, and it's designed to grab a clutch basket, and I'm going to use this tool to hold it. But if you don't have one of these handy, what you can do is, if you can find somebody that's got an old clutch pack around, you can take a set of the of plates and drill some holes in them and rivet the plates together, because every other plate grabs the outside and the other plates grab the inside, and by riveting them together you keep this thing steady. So I'm going to do this. Alright. Okay, and then there's the tab washer. Alright, take the tool loose. And now we got to get the basket out. Now to get the basket out, what we're going to do is take the top cover, put it back on there, and take two of the screws and screw them in there just finger tight, just a little bit. So we screw them in there several threads. Okay, and now we got a puller. We can go. The basket comes right out. Alright, now this washer has splines, and we've got to get the splines lined up with the shaft. There we go. In order to get this guy out. So what happens is it rotates a little bit in there. When you pull this out, you don't want the bearings to slip out and get all dirty. So now the clutch is out. There's the splined washer. I should mention that this is not necessary if you're just dropping the engine. The reason that I'm taking this stuff off is because I'm going to split the crankcase. And in order to split the crankcase, this shaft and this shaft, that's the crankshaft, that's the input shaft for the transmission, they're going to go with the other half of the crankcase. So I have to pull this stuff off. Right, now we're going to take the cams out. So the first thing we've got to do is take our trusty 22 millimeter wrench and loosen up the tensioner. When I put my tensioner back in, I use silicone seal. That's what this black stuff is. And with this out, we can pull up on the cam chain, grab the tensioner, pull it out. Okay, and then take our 10 millimeter wrench and take these two bolts out.